You believe in God, you pray, you worship, you try, and yet some nights you lie awake wondering why your heart still aches. Why love still feels like confusion. Why the one thing you give freely always seems to come back broken. Let's talk about that ache. That emptiness you keep trying to silence with a verse or a song or a perfectly curated Instagram post. Let's talk about how love, real, God-centered love, was never designed to rescue you from your pain. It was designed to reveal it. You see, love, contrary to the world's definition, isn't an emotion that comes and goes. It's not the butterflies. It's not the thrill. Love, in its most sacred form, is a voluntary act. It is a choice, a commitment. A surrender. It is the decision to stay when leaving is easier. It is the courage to forgive when pride demands retribution. It is the willingness to bleed so someone else can begin to heal. And that kind of love, it hurts, but it also heals. Psychologically, love as an organizing principle demands our full humanity. It forces us to wrestle with the self, our wounds, our weaknesses, our ego. Love doesn't allow us to stay shallow. It pulls us into the depths of who we are and asks us to face the parts we'd rather hide. Philosophically, love is the bridge between chaos and meaning. It's what orders the human experience. It gives structure to our suffering, reason to our joy, and a moral compass to our relationships. It says, you are not just a moment of pleasure to me, you are a soul, a burden, a blessing, and I'm willing to carry you. But here's the danger. When we reduce love to pleasure, we lose its power. We turn sacred connection into selfish consumption. We start asking, what can I get from you, instead of what can I give to you? And so many of us are lost, not because we lack love, but because we've been feeding off counterfeits. We confuse passion for permanence, chemistry for character, desire for destiny, but love that's grounded in the spirit, the kind God models for us, is never about escape. It's about endurance. It doesn't just affirm us, it refines us. It is not simply a feeling, it is a fire that burns away everything that isn't truth. To love someone truly, you must see them, not the version they post, not the illusion they project. The real them, the broken parts, the flaws, the insecurities, and still say, you are worth it, because I, too, am carrying the weight of being human. This is where divine love enters. The love that doesn't flinch when you fail. The love that looks at your sin and still chooses redemption. That's the love the Father shows us, and it's the love we're called to mirror in our relationships. So how do we love in a world of imperfection? We stop expecting perfection. We start embracing the process, because loving someone despite their flaws is noble. But loving them because of their shared burden, their fight, their resilience, their fragile beauty, that's holy. So maybe you believe in God, but still feel lost because you're trying to love without being transformed by love. Maybe the real question isn't where is God? Maybe it's, have I invited him into the way I love? Because once you do, love will stop feeling like a game of survival and start becoming the sacred ground where your soul finally learns how to live. You know that love is patient, love is kind. But what happens when that love feels distant? When the promises are clear, but the presence feels far? Let's go deeper, not just into theology, but into the beating, broken human heart that carries it. Love, at its core, is not merely an emotion. It's not a flutter in the chest or a poetic quote we post online. Love, in its truest and most divine form, is a decision. A conscious act of the will to lean in when everything in us wants to pull away. It's the boldest spiritual discipline because it requires the courage to stay present in pain, and that's what we don't talk about enough. Love, if we're honest, is terrifying because real love demands vulnerability, not the curated kind, not the kind where you say, I'm fine, with tears in your eyes. I'm talking about soul-level exposure, the kind of vulnerability that says, here is the part of me I'm afraid no one could love, and I'm showing it to you anyway. That's not weakness. That's bravery, and psychologically, this act of love, the risk of vulnerability, is what transforms our identity. When you allow yourself to be seen in all your flawed humanity, and someone chooses to stay, that moment rewrites the script of your worth. It shifts something deep in your psyche. It says, you are not just useful, you are loved. But here's where many get lost. We chase love for how it makes us feel, not what it helps us become. We want the emotional high, not the emotional honesty. We crave comfort, not character. This is where the philosophical dimension of love must ground us. Because love, detached from discipline, becomes dangerous. It turns people into objects, emotions into transactions, and relationships into escapes. And slowly, without realizing it, we begin to consume love instead of cultivating it. But love, true love, is the soil where our moral development takes root. It's where we learn patience not just in theory, but in the slow work of walking with someone through their fears. It's where sacrifice isn't just symbolic, but practical. It's giving up your right to be right, because peace matters more. It's staying when your pride says leave, because your soul knows there's something sacred still being built. So how do we live in this tension between unconditional love and imperfect people? We learn to love not despite the flaws, but through them. Not in denial of pain, but in partnership with grace. We begin to see love not as a reward, but as a responsibility. Because when you choose to love someone in their humanity, not above it, you participate in the divine. You echo Christ, you reflect the God who looked at your worst day, your darkest hour, your deepest shame, and didn't flinch. He stayed, and now he calls you to do the same, to love, not just in euphoria, but in endurance, not in fantasy, but in faithfulness. To say, I see your burden, and I will help carry it, because you've helped carry mine. So yes, you know Scripture? But don't stop there. Step into the kind of love that lives Scripture not with perfection, but with presence. Because even when you don't feel seen by others, you are always deeply and relentlessly seen by the one who is love himself. You believe in love. You believe in God. You believe in the good he promises, and yet you're still waiting for clarity. Waiting for healing, waiting for someone to love you back with the same depth you've poured out, and in that waiting, a quiet ache grows. If God is love, why do I feel forgotten by it? This is where we must shift our understanding of love. Not as a rescuer who bursts in to fix all things, but as a sacred force that holds steady through all things. Love doesn't always arrive with answers. Sometimes it arrives with presence, because real love doesn't promise instant gratification. It requires patience, discipline, and a deep willingness to stay with the process, even when it's uncomfortable. Love is not escape. It is endurance. Psychologically speaking, we are wired to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. That's the human impulse. And too often, we bring this same impulse into our relationships. We seek love that makes us feel good, that rescues us from loneliness, that affirms us constantly. But what happens when love doesn't feel good? When it doesn't fix you, or fill you, or give you butterflies? That's when the truth of love begins to emerge. Philosophically, love isn't a reward for our needs. It's a response to our willingness. It's the soul's brave choice to remain when logic says run. It's the discipline to be faithful when fantasy has faded. It's the sacred act of waiting not passively, but actively, waiting with hope, waiting with grace, waiting with love as the anchor, not the outcome. You see, the world has sold us a shallow version of love, the kind that intoxicates, inflames, and quickly fades. But divine love, the love we are called to mirror, is not shallow, it is sacrificial. It doesn't always rescue you from the fire, it joins you in it. It doesn't always lift you out of chaos. It teaches you how to walk through chaos with dignity, with faith, with unwavering devotion. And in this kind of love, you learn the sacred art of becoming. The work of becoming through love, every act of waiting in love shapes us. Every moment we choose patience over panic, commitment over escape, vulnerability over withdrawal. We grow, not just emotionally, but morally, spiritually. We begin to realize that love was never about fixing the other person. It was always about becoming the kind of person who can love like Christ without condition, without demand, without needing something in return. This is the deep tension, to hold the ideal of unconditional love in one hand, while holding the brutal reality of human imperfection in the other. And yet, this is where love shines brightest, to look into the flaws of another and say, I see your brokenness, but I also see your worth. I see your mistakes, but I still choose mercy. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because in those flaws, you see the same war you're fighting. You recognize the shared burden of being human, of trying, failing, breaking, and rising again. That's where love becomes holy. You want to love deeply. You want connection, passion, peace. You want to believe that if God is in it, it shouldn't hurt so much. But let's tell the truth, even if it breaks us. Real love will cost you something, and that cost is often what reveals its worth. So many of us are walking around disappointed, not because love has failed us, but because we've been misled about what love truly is. We've been told it's a feeling, that it's chemistry, that it's supposed to complete us, fulfill us, intoxicate us. But love, true, transformative, God-breathed love isn't easy, it's holy, and holiness always requires fire. Love as the furnace of identity psychologically. When we choose to love, especially when it's difficult, we confront the deepest parts of ourselves. Love exposes the ego. It reveals the places we've been hiding, the wounds we never healed, the control we've clung to. Real love forces us to let go. That's the mystery. Love isn't about self-fulfillment, it's about self-emptying. It doesn't just affirm our identity, it forms it. Through every act of sacrifice, every moment of grace, every painful surrender, we become more whole. And it's here, in this sacred undoing, that the philosophical essence of love begins to speak. Love, in its highest form, is not reactive. It is volitional, a conscious decision to bear the weight of another human soul, not because they make you feel good, not because they always get it right, but because you've seen something eternal in them, because you understand that to love is to say, I see your flaws, I see your fears, and I'm not walking away. This is why commitment matters. This is why discipline matters, because without them, love devolves into desire, a hedonistic pursuit of momentary pleasure. And desire can be dangerous when it's mistaken for devotion. Desire says, I'll stay as long as it feels good. But love says, I'll stay, even when it hurts, because you're worth more than my comfort. The tension of the ideal and the real, here's where the tension lies. We dream of unconditional love, but we live in a world of deeply conditional people. We expect to be loved perfectly, but we forget we are also imperfect. So how do we hold both? We return to the cross. The cross was not elegant, it was not painless, but it was love. Love that stayed, love that bled, love that looked at our mess and said, I still choose you. When we model our love after Christ, we understand that to love someone is not to ignore their flaws, it's to embrace them. To say, I know your pain, I carry some of it too, but I still see you as worth the wait. This shared burden of being, that's where intimacy is born. Not in perfection, but in participation, not in fantasy, but in faithfulness. Love isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of purpose, you see. Love doesn't eliminate chaos. It enters it and it brings order, not by controlling, but by enduring. That's what makes it sacred. That's what makes it transformative. So if your love feels heavy, don't run from it. That weight may just be the evidence that what you're building is real. Because love that's easy might not be deep, but love that has been tested, love that has been refined, love that has walked through fire and chosen faithfulness over fleeing. That's love worth fighting for. Let's be honest, most of us come into love carrying wounds, some we talk about, some we bury so deep that even we forget they're there, and in our search for love we are often secretly searching for healing. We want someone to notice, to fix, to understand the pain we can't put into words, but here's what most don't realize: healing doesn't always feel like help. In love, real, sanctifying love doesn't always feel like comfort. Sometimes it feels like confrontation. Sometimes it feels like conviction. Sometimes it exposes the very thing you were trying to hide, because love doesn't coddle brokenness, it calls it into wholeness. The fire that refines, not consumes psychologically. Love becomes dangerous when we reduce it to pleasure. When it's only about what feels good, we treat people like medicine instead of miracles, like something to consume instead of someone to commit to. But love isn't anesthesia, it's surgery. It cuts away pride, it removes selfishness, it stitches together the pieces of us that trauma scattered across time. That's the transformation the world forgets. Real love isn't euphoric, it's evolving. Philosophically, love is not a passive emotion. It is an act of will, a moral choice, a discipline that says, even when I don't feel it, I will do it. Even when I don't understand it, I will choose it. And that choice, repeated over time, forms us. It chisels our character. It purifies our motivations. It teaches us to love not for what we receive, but for what we become in the process. This is how love becomes the organizing principle of human experience. It is not chaos. It is the constant in the chaos. It is not indulgence. It is the instruction that aligns our hearts with heaven. Loving the flawed, not the fantasy. You don't love people because they're easy to love. You love them because you see their worth beyond their wounds. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because of them, that is sacred. Because when you love like that, you enter into their humanity. You say, you're imperfect, but you're real, and I will not require perfection to give you presence. This kind of love mirrors Christ. He didn't wait for us to be whole. He loved us while we were still broken. He didn't demand performance. He offered presence. So we must ask ourselves, do we love with conditions, or do we love with conviction? Do we flee when love gets heavy, or do we become strong enough to carry it? The shared burden of being every soul you love is carrying something. Grief, shame, regret, fear. When we love rightly, we don't just tolerate that burden. We share it, not to fix it. Not to control it, but to honor it, to say, I see what you're carrying, let me walk with you. This is where the divine enters the human. Because the most Christ-like thing we can do is stay. Stay when it's messy, stay when it's quiet. Stay when all the fairy tales fade and all that's left is two people choosing to believe in something higher than emotion, a covenant of becoming. So no, real love doesn't always feel good, but it is always good. Not because it takes away the pain, but because it teaches us how to become people who love through it. And in that sacred becoming, we don't just find love, we find God.